In part 4 of answer writing, we settled one idea. We discussed one idea. A structured answer is a scoring answer. Introduction, body, conclusion. You can now build an answer the evaluator moves through with ease. But a structured answer is not yet a high answer. Why? Completion earns the marks, it does not yet maximize them. So, what lifts a good answer to a top one? What makes the evaluator stop and notice? That is part of 5. That is we are going to discuss now. There is a word students love: enrichment, data, examples, diagrams, maps, and flowcharts. And there is a belief that goes with it that more of these means more marks. But that belief is wrong because enrichment does not add value by existing, it adds value only when it serves the demand. A diagram that the question did not need is not a bonus. It is time you spent not scoring. So the rule of part 5 is not add more. It is one question asked before every addition. Does this earn its place? Is this suitable here? The test for every piece of enrichment ask 3 things. What are they? Does it serve the demand? Does it serve the demand? Not the topic, the demand. Does it save the reader effort? A good map replaces a paragraph. A bad one decorates it. So you have to think before place the map. And third question, is it worth the time it costs? Because in an exam, every second has a price. Enrichment that makes 2 minutes must return more than 2 minutes of marks. If the answer to all these 3 is yes, you can add it. But if not, the strongest to move is to leave it out and move on to the next question. So what each one is for the 5 tools fall into 3 jobs. What are the 5 tools here? Evidence, data, reports, committees, quotations. If the demand of the question is suitable, only you have to put the maps or data or reports or committees or quotations. And one more thing, when you have spent the, let's say, 2 minutes, the marks will come more than 2 minutes. Then only you have to spend that time with the enrichment like data or maps or reports, etc., etc. Otherwise you have to move. That is the wise decision. So comes to the 5 tools here: data, reports, committees, quotations. Evidence. Comes to the evidence part. These are 3 jobs: evidence, illustration, visualization. So comes to the evidence part: data, reports, committees, quotations. Why? It proves a claim, turns an assertion into fact. That is why you have to use evidence. Then we are moving to illustration. What are the illustration? Examples and case studies. What illustration is used in the examination? It makes the abstract concrete, the answer. So we have to use illustration. Illustration, in the illustration we are using examples and case studies. So makes the abstract concrete, shows you understand, not just remember of this particular issue or topic or thing. So it makes the abstract concrete. Comes to the visualization. In the visualization, diagrams, maps, flowcharts, it shows what words would labor to describe. Every enrichment you add is really one of these three jobs, like evidence, illustration, visualization, etc. So name the first job, name the job first, then pick the tool. Data turns a claim into fact. Poverty fell is an assertion. Poverty fell sharply over the decade is better. So, and a precise figure when you know it is better still. So, examples turn the abstract into the concrete, like one real scheme, case, or event proves you understand, not just the remember. Comes to the diagrams and flowcharts. Show a process that words would labor to describe, a cycle, a sequence, a structure. If it has steps or parts, a diagram can carry them faster than a sentence. So comes to the maps. Maps anchor anything spatial, a region, a river, a corridor, a border. If the answer depends on where a small labeled map ends its place instantly. But one thing you have to notice the pattern. Each tool has a job used for its job. It lifts the answer used for decoration. It only costs you time. So after this understanding, you have to do is data, examples, diagrams, flowcharts, maps are used in the examination in the within the answer. But wherever it is useful and suitable, only you have to use. With this data, you claim the fact. You claim the fact. So then understand the examiner. He knows something about this particular issue. So it will be fetching to your marks. Then comes to examples. You have topic one thing abstractly. It will not be concrete. When you use a real scheme or case or event, it proves understanding. It will fetch your marks in higher. Comes to diagrams part. It carry a process, a cycle, a sequence, a structure. It understand to the examiner faster than a sentence. So comes to the map part. For anything spatial, let's say world map, let river, etc. A corridor, a border, etc. A small label map and its place instantly rather than sentence. So with these examples, data, diagrams, enrich your marks. But you have to be very careful in one thing. Is it suitable here? You have to ask yourself, it enrich the answer or it is only decoration purpose? If enrich the answer, you have to do, you have to make, you have to write. Otherwise, it only cost you time if decoration purpose only. So this is the way to enrich your answer in the examination. These data, examples, diagrams, flowcharts under the headings of illustration, evidence, illustration, evidence, and visualization. So in these three sections, in these three jobs comes under all this. Whenever where it will be used, you can use that illustration or that visualization or that evidence. So the usage is most important rather than knowing or unknowing is not very much important. So one more thing, when to add and when to refuse is most important in the enrichment. I am saying again and again this thing. So for this, I taken two previous year questions for live demonstration and a live understanding. Two questions, both 15 markers. For the first, enrichment earns its place. For the second, it does not. And the skill is knowing the difference. If each one, the question itself points to the right tool. You only have to read what it asked for, watch when to add, and watch when to refuse. So we are taking first example, that is 15 markers question, that is what when enrichment earns its place. The question is, what are the major challenges to internal security and peace process in the northeastern states? Map the various peace accords and agreements initiated by the government in the past decade. Answer in 250 words. This is 15 marker question. This is from internal security GS3 paper 2025 question. So you have to understand, after reading the question, you have to understand what is the demand. The demand has two parts. One part is what are the major challenges to internal security and peace process in the northeastern states. This is the first part. And then second part, what? Map the various peace accords and agreements initiated by the government in the past decade. This is the second part. So challenges to internal security and the peace accords of the past decade. This is the demand of the question. These are the two parts you have to understand, and you have to attend these two parts. So now read the second part again. Read the exact word the examiner used. Map the various peace accords. Map. Map here. The question did not say list. It said map. So the examiner has named the tool here. You only have to use it. So and it fits, because the northeast is not one place, it 8 sister states, so each with its own conflict, its own occurred, its own geography. Let's comes to Bodoland in western Assam, Karbi Anglang in the center, Dimohasao the hills, Bruriang and the NLFT in Tripura, ULFA across Assam. A list to brew is this, but a map reveals it in a one glance. So that is why you have to use map here rather than list. Which accord belongs to in which place. So you have to picture it. A rough outline of the northeast you have to write. You have to design, or you have to put this place. Each state you have to mark. Each occurred placed on the state is settled. Bodo 2020, Karbi 2021, Adivasi 2022, DNLA and ULFA 2023, NLFT ATTF 2024. So you have to use these things in that particular map, which state belongs to which time, which occurred, etc. So now apply our three questions. What are the three questions we decided and we discussed previously? That is, does it serve the demand? That is, does it serve the demand? Yes, the demand literally said map. So yes, you have to use. Then comes to the second question. Does it save the reader effort? A labeled map shows occurred by place faster than any paragraph. So it is also serve this purpose. So comes to the next thing, that is it worth the time? Yes, a rough sketch costs a minute and answers half of the question. So yes, three yeses. Does it serve the demand? It serves the demand. It saves the reader effort and is worth the time. So three yeses. So the map does not just earn its place. The question demanded it. And the first half, the challenges should be stays in prose, like porous borders, ethnic fault lines, insurgency, cross border militancy, cross border militancy, listed, have to listed and explained. No diagram needed there. Notice the discipline here. A map where the question asked for, prose everywhere else. Enrichment used for its job. So the job here was visualization. So this is the way to use map or data or examples, visualization, illustration, evidence, one or the other, like this. Whenever use, whenever fits, whenever need, only you have to use. Otherwise it will be like decoration and it will cost your time. So this is the way of enrich the answer. And then comes to the second example, that is also 15 marks question. When enrichment must be refused, when when enrichment must be refused, you have to see, you have to understand in this particular question. The question is, how do you account for the growing fast food industries given that there are increased health concerns in modern society? Illustrate your answer with the Indian experience. The answer should be in 250 words, 15 markers. So same marks like example 1, same length, but a very different question. And here the instinct kicks in. What instinct kicks in? It's a 15 marker. Add a diagram. Look at the answer. Resist it. Read the demand of the question again. How do you account for the growing fast food industries given the increased health concerns in modern society? Illustrate your answer with the Indian experience. This is taken from society question number GS paper 1. The demand, you have to read the demand. Account for the growth, the causes, and despite health concerns, a paradox. So illustrate with Indian experiences as examples. Now ask our three questions of a diagram. Would a flowchart of why fast food growth serve the demand? No, the demand is a paradox. Growth and health concern side by side. A flowchart flattens the tension. It does not explain it. So would you a market size graph save the reader effort? No. So the question did not ask how big the industry is. It is asked why it grows despite the cost. A graph answers a question no one asked. Is any of it worth the time? No. Every minute drawing a box and arrow chart is a minute not spent. On the real level of this question. So we refuse the diagram. So we refuse the diagram and we reach instead for the tool the question actually named illustrate with the Indian experience. The question is asking for examples. So we have to give them. So convenience and urban professional, because long commutes, dual income homes, time scarer than money. That is why this one thing. And then rising incomes and a young population. Second example, a vast demographic that eats out, aggressive expansion and delivery apps, access at the top of screen, and aspiration and branding, fast food as a marker of modern lifestyle. So, and the paradox itself, health concern exists, but it is knowledge, not yet behavior. So, awareness rises slower than appetite, each point grounded in the Indian experiences. That is the enrichment this question wanted, not a diagram. Comes to examples, the job here was illustration, not visualization. The student who confused the two drew a flowchart and scored nothing. That is the whole lesson. Enrichment is not decoration, it is selection and applied to form. In the question they asked, illustrate with the Indian experiences. So that is why the question asked for examples. That is why we have taken convenience. The convenience is important. And rising incomes, apps and expansion, aspirations. These things are these examples. These things are moving modern society into fast foods. Without awareness is also important, but appetite is most important in this context. So that is why wherever flowchart, wherever visualization is important, you have to put there. Here illustration is important. They asked in the question. That is why you are suffice with illustration, not visualization. In this paradox itself, health concern is knowledge, not at behavior. Awareness rises slower than appetite. Illustration, not visualization. The student who confused to drew a flowchart and scored nothing. So enrichment is not decoration. That is the whole lesson you have to understand here. Enrichment is not decoration. It is selection and applied to form. This is not going to tell you anyone. So used for its job, used for not show. A map where the question said map, examples where it said. So illustrate, it lifts the answer. But a diagram the question never asked for, it only costs you time and you can't get the back single mark. So used for its job is good rather than used for show. That is decoration. So now you can improve an answer, you can enrich an answer when it serves the demand, and you can refuse without any second thought when it does not. Data, examples, diagrams, maps, flowcharts, tools each with a job used for the job. They lift the answer. If used for show, they cost you time. But there is a harder test than knowing what to do and what not to do. It is doing all of this, understanding, deciding, building, and improving. Inside a fixed number of words and inside a fixed number of minutes, knowledge does not score if the paper is not finished. So that is why this is most important. So that is part 2, next episode, executing under the time, word limits, paper pacing, completion, the discipline that protects every mark you have learned to earn. That is why next episode we are going to discuss executing under time. In this episode we discussed enrichment, data, examples, visualization, illustration, evidence, wherever it fits or where does not fits, where we have to put, where does not put. That is we discussed in the whole lesson. The whole lesson is discuss, that is simple one thing, enrichment is not a decoration, it is selection applied to form. Then only it lift the answer and fetch the marks. Thank you.